How do you see the current state of the professional development of teacher educators?
Right, so within my vision, my scope, my lens of where I'm seeing it, and that's been largely in Maryland and Virginia in the United States, it seems to be more accidental rather than planned and purposeful. That young faculty are sometimes, if they're fortunate, taken under the wings of more senior faculty and offered opportunities to develop their scholarship and their research, but often not necessarily within their own focus, but within an existing research that's ongoing.
I think a lot of teacher educators, and I don't mean this in a bad way, I think a lot of teacher educators still see themselves as a teacher and they just happen to be teaching in a different environment. Whereas I think a teacher educator should be a scholar, and the content of their work is the knowledge of teaching. So they should actively know about teaching in both a theoretical sense and a practical sense.
I think if I'm talking internationally and the way the status of it and the importance of it, I don't think there is very much about it. I don't think that this is something that politicians are occupied with. I'm not quite sure that the research community in general in education, this is what they deal with. What I'm very optimistic about is that there are very not sporadic, but local initiatives, which I think little by little they become well known internationally.
We carried out this review study, and one of the things we thought was very impressive is the amount of knowledge we developed in the last 25 years about being a teacher educator. But there is a kind of tension between what is known about being a teacher educator and, as you just explained, what's going on in practice.
Yeah, and I think part of that, Mickey, is because if you look at education, we sort of have grown out of the work of other fields. So psychology has had a big influence in the past. The idea that you can train people to be a teacher has another influence on the way things are shaped. The notion of an apprenticeship into teaching, all of those things, they last. The ideas continue on in the system in unusual ways. But it's not a way of thinking in this modern era about what it means to be developed as a professional, as an academic, as a scholar of teacher education. So when you say that there's been a growth in this in the last 20 years, that makes sense because the profession has started to take more control of itself, and more people are starting to research and write about teacher educators' work as teacher educators themselves. And I think that's a big shift and an important shift. Yeah.
I think internationally the professional development of teacher educators is beginning to receive more sustained attention than it probably has ever since I've been in the field, which is getting on for 25 years now. I think that's been helped in a European context by the European Commission's highlighting of the issue of teacher educators.
We need a place to practice. We need a real place to practice, and we need a place that says it's okay to say you don't have it figured out. And not only that you don't have it figured out, but that you are interested to work with other colleagues to research the pieces that you want to know better and be supported in those efforts. And I really do see this self-assessment piece as our opportunity to now go forward and move ahead of the crowd and say, not only do I recognize the gaps in my practice, I celebrate them because I accept the vulnerability because I can see the growth that will come from the change.
I think we have to voice our message much more clearly in terms of making it more formalized,
And I think that it is the community that will keep it up in the air.
The shift in the next 10 or 20 years, I think would be valuable if there was a general agenda that people saw a need to work on collaboratively, so that you actually build a momentum behind particular studies. And if you go back to when Ken Zeichner and Marilyn Cochrane-Smith did that big studying teacher education thing, that was a clear agenda item that they had, where they were saying we need a focus for the research in teacher education, and good research should lead to good professional development. And so being able to know is clearly valuable, being able to do is really important, but I think as a teacher educator, everything that you do should be based on what you know, and that knowledge, that epistemic base, should be something that's able to be defended in public ways.
Final question.
Yeah.
Who should make that international program?
Oh, you and me.
On the
That is a really hard question, actually, Mickey, because you think about how do you ever get a large profession internationally to agree to do something. But one thing I do know is that when you have good ideas and good networks, you can make things begin to happen.
And then I think we have to unite more. And I think maybe we have to have a specific meeting points, not too big, smaller meeting points where we can sit and discuss and develop, maybe on paper, a program that an international teacher educators would think that this is a framework that we would like to take with us, and then to approach the policymakers and see this is something that we would like to take in. So get together, let's sit and talk and work out a proposal for which we can think this is what we would like to have.